Good morning, everybody. We are going to be breaking down the RBG tier list just to get a sense of what is going to be good, what's going to be viable, and what classes we can actually pick from. I will be ranking each a little bit differently. For example, tanks, they're going to be grouped together, healers, and then DPS all in all. So first off, we're going to be starting with tanks. And what I want to start with is going to be Prot Pally. So Prot Pally right now is not the strongest. It's actually probably one of the weaker tanks at the moment. And that's because its survivability is not the greatest. Its damage output is definitely not the greatest. Its mobility is not the greatest. It does have Blessing of Freedom and Divine Steed. You can get 2 charges, make it last longer. But other than that, if you're outside of Blessing of Freedom, you're kind of stuck. So there's not much mobility. The damage output, like I said, isn't that great. They don't have great single target or even AoE. The CC is lackluster. So when it comes into a blitz for a tank, he doesn't do all that much for you, for a team. He can't be an EFC that well. So I'm going to say the same as a Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior is about the same instance. Once again, not many CCs. A little bit more CCs. I would say better than a Prot Warrior for sure. But as far as sustainability, it's not at all there. And damage output and flag carry, it's just, you have better options. They are going to be still on a D tier list as far as tanks. Next up, we are looking at Guardian Druid. Guardian Druid I am putting at an S tier. It is a super strong hybrid class. I mean, right now, all of Druid specs currently are actually very strong in my opinion. They have great utility, great speed, great self-healing. They're just a phenomenal all-in-all tank. They are very hard to get down, but they are a great node to a camper to stay on whatever node. They're great to carry the flag. So as far as RBGs go, they're going to be an S tier. Next up, we are looking at, where is it? Vengeance. Vengeance, I'm going to put it in a C tier. Great mobility, right? Has a great glide and jumps and everything like that. Lackluster CC, decent damage, nothing too crazy, but better than these two down here. And then we're also looking at our self-sustainability. They have a lot of self-healing, so they can get in and out of CC pretty easily. Snares, roots, that kind of thing. They are going to be a C tier, mainly because of the mobility. It's going to rank them higher than both these two down in the D tier. Next up, we have Blood. Blood I am going to be putting at a C tier as well. Their self-sustainability is extremely high. I would actually say it's probably better than a Vengeance Demon Hunter. And the main reason is because, like I said, the self-sustainability, very high, very strong, very tanky, very hard to get down. Damage is lackluster, CC isn't really there, but if they need to actually pull people and move, they can. Their mobility is not the greatest either, but I would say it's better than most patches that it's been in, and it's in a better state. So I'm putting the Blood into C tier. Brewmaster I am putting up in A tier. Mainly because of its survivability and because of its mobility. It's extremely strong. It's going to be one of the better flag carriers currently, and just all in all, a decent solid spec. It is very tanky, and I think it does the job pretty well as far as being an EFC or just a capper, something to stay on something the entire game, just to sit there. But they're going to be in A tier. Next up, I'm going to start off with the DPS next. I'll save healers for last, but I want to start with augmentation off first because augmentation is in such a weird spot in my opinion. Augmentation, I'm placing in a B tier. I normally have it kind of lower, but I am going to be placing in a B tier because augmentation right now is good, and I'm actually starting to see them more and more in PvP for whatever reason, and especially BGs. I think people are just more interested in trying it out to see if it's viable, to make it seem like it works. In a RBG setting, I can't tell if it really works. It's going to be very well in team fights. It has decent CC, has okay CC actually, has great survivability, great off-put heals, great damage for the most part, but obviously what makes it special is its buffing potential. So as long as you have a player that can really keep Ebon Might up, that's going to be where that skill kind of lacks, and that's where the skill cap ceiling is for that. I will be placing it in a B tier because it's not like phenomenal. It is a little bit hard to kill because it is very mobile, but overall it's just going to be placed in B tier because it's kind of meh, nothing too crazy, but I could see it being a decent pick for compositions. Affliction is going to be in S tier. Affliction right now, if you have not played against one, is just insane, and it gets way worse in RBGs, and the main reason is because it's dotting potential. They have a move where they can literally just place a curse upon a player and instantly gain 2 or 3 dots. I think it's Agony and Corruption at the same time, or Wither, off of one global cooldown, and then they're able to copy that with a Soul Shard over to another player every 30 seconds, but they could literally go ahead and cast that on multiple players, especially in a team fight in a blitz scenario where there's only like 8 people. So they have a lot of potential to spread a lot of their dots in a team fight and make that sustained pressure go really hard, and it's going to be kind of important and vital to always have. Their CC is great, they're very tanky, they're just an overall good solid pick for a DPS. Arcane is, I'm going to place them A because they're just so strong as far as damage. They are a little bit tanky, but if they sit in the back and just consistently cast, especially getting a polymorph off or something like that on a healer, they have a lot of potential to one-shot players. So they're going to be an A. They do take a lot of setup to get going and a ramp up, more than most caster classes. So I am putting them A. They are very strong, but I would rather pick a different mage spec, just me personally. Arms I'm placing a B tier. Not great damage, not great, I wouldn't say great damage. They do a lot of damage, they do, but they don't have that RBG potential. They're great in arenas, they're great in other PvP scenarios, but when it comes to Blitz, you need a lot of AoE to go out all at once on groups, and you want to be able to spread that. Arms is kind of lacking in that AoE. They have good sustainability for the most part. They definitely do need a healer, and their defenses are just kind of meh. So damage output is great, survivability is okay, and for as far as an RBG goes, they're going to be placed into B tier. And next up we have Assassination Rogue. So Assassination Rogue I am placing on A tier, and the main reason for that is because rogues are going to be really essential in RBGs and blitzes because of their ninja capping abilities. They can literally go stun a player or CC them, sap them, whatever the case they may be, and then be able to get the node or whatever they need to do. They're also great in team fights because their CC capability and their damage output and survivability. Just all in all, a great solo type player, can really dish out and be a game changer. So having a good assassination rogue, or a rogue in general, is going to be very important. They're going to be in A tier because they have such high damage, great survivability, and their role that they play in BGs. Balance I am placing in A tier or S tier as well. So the reason why balance is going there is, if you have not seen charts and all that, Starfall, Starfire, every damage ability that they have are hitting very hard in BGs, and their spread pressure with their dots and everything are just getting that much better later on, and right now they are just being able to spread that damage. They have a great CC with their Cyclone ability, and just overall great survivability as well. They have great being an off-tank capper as well, so if your tank is dead or for whatever reason, I mean, they can go into bear form and perform very well as well. I would actually say they're probably more important than an Affliction Warlock for sure, so they're going to be ranked higher than them. Just overall, they play a great role in BGs. They're probably going to be a must-have kind of spec to need. It's going to be these two specs for sure. But balance overall is going to be an S tier. BM, I'm going to place I'll place them in B. So they have, like I said, they have great survivability, great decent damage. I wouldn't say great damage, but decent damage. But they don't have much of a role in BGs because their AoE ability is okay. I mean, with their pets cleaving and everything like that, their survivability is mediocre, nothing too crazy, because outside of Dieter, they don't really have much, other than maybe a Feign Death and a Disengage, as well as their Exhilaration move. So anything outside of that, they really don't have too much. Like I said, damage is lackluster. They could be used to spot a Stealthy, but it's not a mandatory thing to have, in my opinion, because there is another class that we'll talk about later that can see stealths way easier. But overall, they're going to be a B tier. Demonology, I'm placing in B tier as well. Their damage is lackluster in any PvP content right now. Their survivability is very good. Their CC potential is okay, just because of the amount of fears that they could possibly get off. but it just really depends on that. Like I said, their damage isn't great. They don't have a specific role other than to kill the other team, but there are other better picks to pick other than a Demonology Warlock. Next up, we have Destruction. Destruction I'm going to place up into a higher B tier, and only reason because their AoE capability isn't the highest as well as far as what we are trying to look for in BGs, but they're going to be a great single target damage dealer and survivability. They don't really have the potential to take a flag all the way across the map that well. Their mobility is very, stationary actually, and then their defensive capabilities are high, but they don't have a specific role in BGs other than to deal damage, and they're putting out okay damage in a for that spec. Devastation I'm placing on A tier. So they're going to be kind of important in my opinion, right? They bring a very cool buff for the party for as far as mobility. That's going to be very important, and as well as their gliding ability and their hover ability. So kind of like in the same scenario with balance, they're going to be kind of important if their tank dies. They are one of the most mobile classes that we have available right now, and if the tank dies, they can take the flag and take it over because of their mobility is being so high. They have great off healing as well, and if they don't have a healer around them, and the only downside is that their defensive cooldowns aren't the greatest. They just have a couple damage reductions, but they have nullifying shroud as well that can prevent them from getting CC'd, which is also another plus. They do phenomenal damage as well. They have insane burst, especially when it comes to multiple targets. If they're running Scale Commander, where they can get a mass disintegrate out and hit multiple targets, they hit pretty hard. So their AoE capability is pretty high, and their single target damage is just as high, if not actually probably way better. So they're going to be getting A tier. Next up, we got Elemental. Elemental I'm putting in, I would say an A or B. I'll say A, so a low A though. And the main reason why is because their AoE potential is pretty high as long as they have Liquid Magma Totem. So if they have a lot of, in a beginning team fight, right, right off the rip, they have insane burst. Their burst is really good. Their defenses are really good, but what their AoE is going to come down to is how good they can get off their Liquid Magma Totem along with their lava bursts, getting Ancestors out, and then popping Ascendants to really get those lava bursts out. So their spread AoE damage is extremely high. They are one of the tankiest casters you have available, so when it comes to team fights in a bursting type scenario, you're definitely going to want an Elemental. Next up, we got Enhancement. Enhancement I am putting on B tier. I would actually maybe say a little bit higher than these specs, probably right above BM and Demonology. Their AoE using Stormbringer right now is extremely strong, but I think the spec to play with is Heroic, the other one, Totemic. Yeah, I think it's just called Totemic, because that Surging Totem does hit a lot of players and kind of rapidly and hard. So right now they are having a weird spot and they are being played with as far as their damage, but their damage overall and burst window is a lot. They do have that good AoE potential, and like I said, just like Elemental, they are actually very tanky as well. So they're going to be in a B spec. And I would say anything in this B spec, other than maybe Augmentation, because that's going to be a really, just depends on your kind of comp scenario, is not going to be that of an important spec to have, but it has potential. Next up, we got Feral Druid. Feral Druid I am putting in S tier as well. Along with their, just like a rogue, they have that stealth stun capability. They have that great CC capability to cap and ninja things if they need to. They have that phenomenal mobility, just like a druid. But overall, druids are playing, like I said, phenomenally right now, just because of how strong it is. Feral is insane with the single target. They don't have that great AoE potential, and that's not why I'm placing them in S tier. I would say maybe they're going to be on the lowest S more than likely, but I would say maybe even a high A. But I would actually place them here just because their burst potential, their capping ability, their off healing capability, that off tank possibility. They just have so many options in the way that they play that they can kind of fill a lot of roles. So in a BG scenario, they're going to be S tier, but I would say maybe high A because they perform everything just pretty good. But their role is going to be kind of important to have. Fire I'm placing B tier, maybe even C tier. I don't think fire is going to be that needed. Their survivability is kind of like okay, it's nothing crazy to in my opinion, it takes a decent mage to actually make their defensive survivability actually work for them. Their damage is kind of meh, and their AoE possibility is kind of even worse, honestly, because they are still getting buffed in the process of trying to get Living Bomb, and I think that Flame Strike is gone now, so they just don't have that many great AoE possibilities for them, and so that means their pressure is going to be a little bit less in team fights, and they also don't have great single targets, so they're going to be C tier. They need some love if they're looking at BGs. Frost Mage, I would put either S tier or even the highest possible A tier, or maybe even like an A plus category if I had that here, but I'm not going to place that. So I'll say they're going to be, I'll place them right above Feral, and the reason why is because mages right now have a burst window of like 30 seconds. It seems like they're able to get out a lot of damage very quickly, especially to multiple players. They have that Ring of Fire. If you can get a group just to stay in that Ring of Fire, you're going to be doing a lot of spread damage. So their AoE capability is extremely high. Like I said, their defensive ability is based on that mage itself. It does have kind of like a skill cap in my opinion. And they have that, polymorph. So polymorph, a healer, is going to be important because it doesn't have a cooldown or anything like that, and you can get off a lot of CC that way between Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave, or even Polymorph. So they're going to be in S tier. They're going to be a great addition to any BG comp no matter what. Next up we got Frost DK. Frost DK I'm going to either place as a high A or high B or a low A. I'll probably say a high B. Their AoE is pretty good. Their control is very good. As far as their CC goes, if they can pull multiple players in a single spot, they could change the game, in my opinion, or the way the fight will go, just because in the beginning they can continuously stun multiple players over and over again. Their AoE is very good, but there are better specs to choose from. They are kind of tanky. Their survivability is good, but their mobility is also down. It's better than what it has been in the past, but at the moment, they're just not that spec to, hey, I really need this spec to play. So right now I am going to place them as a high B because their AoE and their control is so good. They got their spot in high B, maybe a low A. Next up we got Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior is just going to be a mid A type of spec, and purely based off the damage. If they can get a bunch of players into a Blade Storm window, they will smack everybody. They do a great amount of damage. Their burst potential, single target damage, and AoE is all phenomenal because they have a lot of cleave if you can group them all up in one spot. Their survivability does need a healer. It is a warrior. They're not the greatest, but just that alone for their damage, they're going to get that A spot. Havoc Demon Hunter. This one's kind of a hard placement. So the other class that I was talking about that can see stealthies is going to be your Havoc because of Spectral Sight. This can be very important, especially if you want somebody to sit on a node or something like that. Their mobility is extremely high. Their damage output is lackluster compared to most. So I'm actually going to place them in like a B tier. Having Spectral Sight isn't a must-have. Finding a stealthy isn't a must-need to change the game. It's not enough to change the outcome of a fight, in my opinion. But their AoE spread is very good. Their damage is, mediocre, nothing crazy. Their survivability is also okay. They have great self-healing. But what makes this spec so good is because of its mobility as well. So they can be in and out. This could be another one that could be like an off flag carrier or something like that, mainly purely off its mobility potential. But because of the defensives are kind of lackluster, their damage is okay, but they do have Spectral Sight, I'm going to place them in a B tier. Next up, we got Marksman Hunter. Marksman is going to be I would say a high A above all these. And the reason why is because their burst potential is also extremely good. Their survivability is okay. But their AoE is phenomenal. They have a great spread. They can get a lot of damage out very quickly to multiple players. And they also have Flare. So they can use their Flare to find any kind of stealthies if possible. They are also one of those good specs to sit on a base if need be. They can definitely 1v1. They're a great dueler. So they're going to get into an A spot mainly because their role in a BG is going to be kind of important depending on what you need. Then we have Outlaw. Outlaw is going to be, I'm going to place them low B, maybe above, below Enhance, above BM. And the main reason, because it's a rogue, I would probably place this a little bit lower, honestly. But because it is a rogue, it is a stealthy, it can go in and out very easily, it can still ninja cap anything. I'm going to place it in B. I haven't seen any rogues or rogue outlaws in PvP at all. I don't think I've actually seen one, because the damage is so low and there's just better specs to play than an outlaw rogue right now. They do need some love. They're very iffy as far as if their damage is going to be good or not, so they're going to be getting B tier, and the only reason why they're in B tier is because they are a rogue, and that's about it. Moving on to Retribution Paladin. Retribution is going to be another one that's going to be just a high B, maybe low A, but I'll say a high B. Phenomenal damage, don't get me wrong, Paladin's damage is great. The mobility is okay, nothing too crazy, just like how it was with a prop pally. Their utility is what makes them very important, or more important than others, because they can bubble others, they can lay on hands others, they can Blessing of Sacrifice others, so their CC isn't also that great. So as a damage dealer, single target, phenomenal. AoE, they're okay, they're not the greatest AoE spec. I would pick something else for an AoE spec, but at the moment, I would say they're going to be a B tier. They're going to be a great addition overall, honestly. I don't think it'd be a bad pick, but because of its role is just as a damage dealer, they're going to be a B spec. They don't have anything further than just being a B tier. Next up, we got Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is going to be an A tier, and maybe even just a low S, but I think it's going to be a high A, and the main reason is because obviously it's spread. Like I've been saying, AoE is very important as far as how much spread pressure you can get off in a team fight, and if you just have dots going off between these two classes and a Shadow Priest, you're going to take down a lot of teams because the healers aren't going to be able to keep up. Its AoE is really good with an instant Psychic Scream. Its off heals are also pretty good, and I'm just placing them in A tier because their spread in AoE is good, but their bursting isn't insane in an AoE case. So they have great sustainability, but their role is going to be just purely damage dealing to others, not CCing or controlling others or anything like that. Next up, we got Sub. Sub I am placing in S tier. Probably above, probably right here. I would say they're probably mid S. And main reason why is because Sub is the ninja capper. They are literally the ninja. They are in and out of stealth so frequently, it's actually very hard for them to die, in my opinion, because a good rogue knows when to come in, CC, ninja cap, and they can blink out again. They're gone. So it's going to be hard. They're going to be a great 1v1 duelist. That's kind of like its role as Sub. They're going to be very important to have. It's really nice to have that ninja capping ability. I would say they're better than Assassination in that retrospect, and their role is going to be very important. So they're going to be sitting at an S tier. They do great damage. They have great defensive survivability, so they are definitely going to be in S tier. Next up, we have Survival. So Survival is a phenomenal spec. I would even say maybe a high B or a low A. It has great AoE, it has great damage, it has great single target, it has that flare potential just like a Marksman. The survivability is probably a little bit better than a Marksman, but in a 1v1 scenario, I don't think it's better than Marksman. I think a Survival is probably going to be A overall, probably one of the lower A's, and main reason is just because you do have a better spec to play over Survival right now. It is a close range playing spec, so you have to get close to even deal damage, but it still does phenomenal damage. It has a great 1v1 aspect to them. They could play the same role as an MM, but I think an MM will play that role better. But as far as everything goes, I will say all in all, they are going to be a low A, maybe a high B, but I'll place them in a low A right now. Unholy. Unholy is going to be another one that's going to be a high A spec, just because their disease pressure that they can put on multiple targets. They're going to be an insane tankiness. They have that anti-magic zone, which is going to come in clutch for a lot of people because it's an AoE move. That's going to be pretty important. But the amount of damage that they can spread, the defensive utilities that they have, and their survivability is very good right now. So their role is just going to be a damage dealer as well. Nothing crazy. But the amount of damage that they can put out is going to be much better than most, especially with their AoE spread. And they have just solid defensives for other players between their anti-magic shield and anti-magic zone. So that's going to place them in a higher A spec, mainly because of their damage potential of what they can do. Next up, we got Windwalker. Windwalker is going to be kind of hard to place, because I would even say low A because their burst potential is insane. Their AoE is pretty good. They have great off healing using Celestial Conduit. I would probably place them in the highest B or lowest A, but I'm going to place them in the highest B. They are an insanely mobile class. They have decent survivability, but outside their defensive cooldowns, which is probably going to be utilized, monks are probably going to be targeted one of the first ones to die, typically, just because their survivability. So for them to get off any of their heals to help out a team fight is going to be probably a little bit harder than most. So I'm placing them in B, the highest B, mainly based off of their mobility and their bursting potential, because they have an insane burst right now. But outside that burst potential, it's just going to be sustained, which is still really good, but their AoEing to spread that damage is a little bit harder, because they do have to have the right positioning. So they're going to be placed in B tier, just because of that. Alright, next up we got our healers. Disc Priest, I'm placing them in A tier. I'm just gonna put them at the end. I'm not saying that they're the worst A tier. I'm just saying that they're gonna be placed in A tier as a healer. They have great heals. They have great bubbles. Their survivability is insane. They can have a great, phenomenal AoE type style of healing. They're just a strong healer right now, well balanced. They don't do anything insane that's like, oh my god, this is a must-have healer. Just, it's a solid healer to have on your team. And that's pretty much that. Holy Priests. Holy is going to be B, maybe even a C, but I'll place him in B. But right now, as a healer, they aren't the greatest healer. They just don't have that same output as Disc does, and Disc also deals a decent amount of damage, where Holy doesn't deal as much damage. But overall, its healing is, like I said, lackluster. There's nothing phenomenal about them. You could shut out a Holy Priest pretty quickly and easily without any cause, you know, it's very simple. So they're going to be into B tier. Holy Paladin, they're going to be in A tier. They're going to be right behind Disc for sure. I feel like Blizzard is still trying to put them in the game to find their place, and I think they're slowly starting to find their place. They're an insanely strong healer. The downside of them is that they have to cast literally every single little heal that they need. They have phenomenal utility, though. That's what earns them the spot in A tier, because nobody plays like them. Nobody has that utility like them. That's so special to a Holy Paladin. They're going to be a phenomenal healer to have. Their AoE heals are okay, but their single target heals are just huge. So they're going to be an A tier spec. Next up, we're looking at Preservation. Dear Lord. Preservation's S tier. And I know I skipped Mistweaver. I just wanted to talk about Preservation because I got a little excited. Preservation is just insane. Their output of healing, their AoE healing, they're probably one of the best, if not the best, AoE healer in a big, long scenario. The downside is that they do have to play kind of close to range, but honestly, between their defensives and what they have available to them, they have no issue healing, in my opinion. Even while stunned, they have Emerald Communion, and that can be used whenever they want. So that's an insane cooldown to have. And just their uptime of healing is very good. They were the most mobile healer as well, always being on the move, being able to cast and doing whatever they need to. So they're going to be an S tier spec. Next up, we have Mistweaver. Mistweaver is doing probably better than it has in a while, in my opinion. It's a phenomenal single target healer. I will say it's going to be above Disc Priest, and the main reason why is because its survivability. Its output is still very strong, but its survivability, being how mobile they are, it's kind of, I mean, they're a very mobile class, way more mobile than these two combined, and they're going to get their A spot just because based off their mobility and their ability to heal while moving around and surviving is going to be a stronger output than these two right here. We're looking at Resto Druid. Resto is going to be an A tier as well. Phenomenal AoE healing, but I think because of their HOTS in a BG setting, they're not hitting as hard, but they can put out a lot of HOTS on a lot of players very quickly. They have Tranquility and Tree Form to be able to back that burst healing up, so their single target healing is insanely strong. They're insanely hard to kill because of Bear Form, and they're going to get their A tier. They're going to be the highest A, mainly because of their ability to survive. They can survive better than any of these healers. I would say they probably have the best survivability, just because of their trees that they can spawn and their bears that they have. Next up, last one, we got Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman is going to be probably D tier, actually. So I'm placing them in, I'm just kidding, they're not going to be D tier, they're actually going to be S tier. And the main reason is because you're not going to kill them. They have the most utility out of everybody right now. They have so many different totems. Using Totemic, they have so many different totems and so many ways to spread their heals against every player. They're going to be ranked lower than a Preservation Evoker though right now, only because of their mobility. Their mobility is strong, but nowhere near like being able to heal and cast at the same time and doing all those. So they are going to be placed into an S tier. But because of their healing output is insane, their utility isn't even more insane thing, they're going to be S tier for sure. So guys, this is what we have with our RBG list or Blitz list. If you guys have any questions, if you have any comments, let me know down below. Do you guys agree with this list? Have you seen anything different? Do you think other classes are going to be different? Just let me know down in the comments. Like the video, please. I appreciate it. Please the YouTube gods to get that algorithm out. And I will see you in another one.